The fight for African American rights inspired many women to also fight for theirs. Many women were prominent leaders in the fight for anti-slavery. At the World Anti-Slavery Convention, women were enraged to find out that they had to sit behind a curtain in a separate gallery and were not allowed to participate with the men at the convention. Many women began to see similarities between the discrimination of African Americans and women. Elizabeth Cady Stanton went to the Anti-Slavery Convention on her honeymoon with her husband. She was so angered to find out that she was not allowed to participate that she and her new friend Lucretia Mott decided to form a society to advance the rights of women. 8 years later, they announced the Seneca Falls Convention. The Seneca Falls Convention was held to discuss the social, civil, and religious rights of women. It took place on July 19th and 20th in 1848. Only women participated the first day, but men were allowed on the second day. Stanton and Matt encouraged all people to come regardless of how they felt about women's rights. As a result of this convention, it is known as the birthplace of feminism. Lucretia Mott helped Elizabeth Cady Stanton to form the Seneca Falls Convention. She dedicated her life to the goal of human equality. She was the first president of the American Equal Rights Association. The organization was formed to achieve equality for African Americans and women. There were many people who disliked the idea of expanding women's rights. Even some women believed they did not need new rights. Some critics said women shouldn't work in public. Because of this, some women were willing to help, but only from within their homes. It was also believed that women lacked the physical or mental strength to survive without men. They believed women should go from the protection of their fathers to the protection of their husbands. That is also why men controlled property. That is one reason why Sarah Grimke never married. She felt that if she had married, she would be more of a slave than a wife. Sarah is one of the two Grimke sisters. The Grimke sisters were both proud abolitionists. They were a few of the first to also recognize the importance of women's rights. They pointed out laws that negatively affect women, demanded for equal pay and work, and fought for equal educational opportunities. Angelina was the second Grimke sister. She did get married, but her husband gave up his right to control her property. Angelina also refused to promise that she would obey her husband during the marriage ceremony. Margaret Fuller was also a powerful speaker and writer. She was an American journalist, critic, and women's rights advocate. She was also a famous transcendentalist. This means she believes that all people have knowledge about themselves in the world that goes beyond what they can see, hear, taste, touch, or feel. Margaret published Women in the 19th Century, a book about marriage and racial equality, and explained the role of women in society. Her book influenced many people. Sojourner Truth was very influential also. Her birth name was Isabella Baumfree. She changed her name because she felt as though her mission in life was to spread truth. Sojourner Truth reflects that because sojourner means traveler. She never learned how to read or write, but impressed many people by speaking at conventions and by bringing awareness to women's rights. Harriet Beecher Stowe thought highly of Sojourner Truth. She said she had never spoken with anyone who had more personal presence than this woman. She had published more than 30 books. Her best-selling anti-slavery novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, made her an international celebrity. William Lloyd Garrison owned an anti-slavery newspaper, The Liberator. He grew up poor, searching for food and struggling through several apprenticeships. He joined the abolition movement. He also supported women's rights, and when he found out about the World Anti-Slavery Convention, he sat with the women in protest. The Seneca Falls Convention organizers wrote the Declaration of Sentiments. The document detailed beliefs about social injustice toward women. They used the Declaration of Independence as the basis for the language for their declaration. The authors included 18 charges against men, the same amount of charges against King George III. It was signed by 100 people. One nearby factory worker, 19-year-old Charlotte Woodward, signed the Declaration of Sentiments. Charlotte Woodward worked long hours in a factory making gloves. She also had to turn over all her money to her father. She was the only signer of the Declaration who lived to see women vote. When she heard the news, she ran from house to house to spread it. She never got to vote because she was confined to her bed. Lucy Stone was a suffragist, public speaker, and abolitionist. She was the first female from Massachusetts to earn a college degree. Lucy Stone was an inspiration for many. She even influenced Susan B. Anthony. Susan B. Anthony brought strong organizational skills to the women's rights movement. She did a lot to turn the fight for women's rights into reality. She argued that women and men should get equal pay for equal work. She believed women should be allowed to enter traditionally male professions like religion and law. She was very concerned with laws that affected women's control of money and property. Susan led the campaign to change laws regarding the property rights of women. She wrote in her diary, "No woman could be free without a purse of her own." After forming a network to cover all of New York, she collected more than 60,000 signatures to petition for a new property rights law. In 1860, New York gave married women ownership of their wages and property. Other states in the Northeast and Midwest soon created similar laws. Thanks to the effort of many hard workers, dreamers, risk takers, and believers, the movement grew. Women began to take advantage of better educational opportunities. They learned how to gather for meetings and conventions more efficiently and how to work together. Men began to also fight for women's rights. People found it unacceptable that women weren't allowed to vote or sit in on juries. The movement sped up in the mid-1800s, and majority of Americans began to realize that anything men could do, women could too. That did not solve all conflicts, however. There are still many signs of gender discrimination in our society today. The following are graphs that show how men continue to be paid more than women that are working the same job for the same amount of hours. This is a huge problem that needs to be solved. We cannot continue this way. All humans were created equal and should be treated equally. Women's rights are human rights, and human rights are women's.